Jordan Belfort stole $200 million. Ordinary men and women who answered their phones in kitchens and living rooms across America, trusting the smooth assurances of wealth that would secure their futures, only to watch every penny of their life savings vanish into the machinery of a fraud so vast and so brazen that it would one day be repackaged by Hollywood as the ultimate American success story. At the center of it all stood Stratton Oakmont, a boiler room operation masquerading as a prestigious brokerage house on Long Island, where the telephones rang ceaselessly and the air itself seemed charged with the electric promise of easy fortune. Yet beneath the polished desks and tailored suits pulsed a machine built for one purpose: extraction. The firm's unofficial motto, whispered like a battle cry among the brokers, was simple and merciless: don't hang up until the client buys or dies. A directive that transformed cold calling into psychological warfare, where every hesitation from the other end of the line was met with scripted aggression, fabricated urgency, and the relentless drumbeat of lies designed to part people from their money before they could even catch their breath. The pump-and-dump scheme that powered this empire was not some sophisticated Wall Street innovation, but a brutally effective grift refined to industrial scale. Belfort and his lieutenants would target obscure penny stocks companies with no real revenue, no products, sometimes little more than a name on a piece of paper, then flood the market with orchestrated hype. Brokers, high on cocaine and the thrill of commission, would call thousands of strangers each day.
To me, they have very little credibility right now. I've been trying to settle this thing for years, and they've essentially stonewalled me at every step. So I've said enough about this. Let's move on.
Painting visions of overnight riches, urging immediate buys with the false certainty that the stock was about to explode. As demand surged and share prices climbed on nothing but hot air, Stratton's insiders quietly sold their own massive holdings at the artificial peak, cashing out millions while the stock collapsed behind them like a house of cards in a hurricane. Retirees in Florida lost their pensions. Factory workers in the Midwest saw college funds for their children evaporate. Small business owners who had scrimped for decades found their nest eggs reduced to pennies on the dollar. One after another, the victims surfaced in court documents and later in quiet lawsuits. Their stories a litany of ruined retirements, foreclosed homes, and shattered trust. Inside Stratton's offices, the atmosphere was not merely chaotic but deliberately corrosive. A pressure cooker of drugs, humiliation, and psychological manipulation. That turned ambitious young men into predators who viewed clients as prey and ethics as weakness. Mountains of cocaine were passed around like office supplies. Quaaludes were pumped like vitamins to keep the energy manic and the judgment non-existent. And the daily rituals of excess wharf tossing contests, meat tossing for sport, strippers on desks, and public shaming of anyone who dared show restraint served as bonding exercises that bound the sales force to Belfort's vision. Brokers were broken down and rebuilt, taught that hesitation was failure, and that the only morality was the close. Those who questioned the lies were mocked, demoted, or driven out. All those who embraced the frenzy rose through the ranks, their consciences numbed by chemicals and the intoxicating rush of untraceable cash. It was a cult of personality disguised as a trading floor, where loyalty to Belfort meant loyalty to the grift, and the destruction of outsiders was simply the cost of doing business. Nowhere was the scheme more nakedly displayed than in the Steve Madden IPO, a 3-minute frenzy that netted Stratton $23 million through pure manipulation. Belfort had quietly accumulated a controlling stake in the shoe company before it went public. On the morning of the offering, his brokers unleashed a coordinated blitz, driving demand through the roof with scripted calls that created the illusion of insatiable investor hunger. Shares that should have opened at a modest price rocketed upward in seconds, allowing Stratton to dump its holdings at the inflated peak. While the public bought high and watched the value plummet once the insiders had exited, the operation was so brazen, so perfectly timed, that regulators later called it a textbook case of securities fraud. Yet for Belfort, it was simply another day at the office. Another fortune funneled into Swiss bank accounts and shell companies. That layered the money through a dozen jurisdictions until its origins were all but untraceable. When the FBI finally closed in, the house of cards began to collapse under the weight of its own deceit. Investigators peeled back layer after layer of money laundering, tens of millions routed through Swiss banks, through nominee accounts, through offshore entities, designed to obscure the trail, revealing a financial web so intricate that it took years to fully unravel. Belfort, sensing the endgame, made the ultimate calculation of self-preservation. He turned informant. Wearing a wire against his own partners and closest friends, he recorded their confessions in cars and restaurants and offices, trading their freedom for his own lighter sentence. The man who had built an empire on loyalty now betrayed it without hesitation, emerging after only 22 months in a cushy federal prison camp, a sentence so lenient it felt like a reward for cooperation rather than punishment for the destruction he had caused. Court records ordered him to pay $110 million in restitution to the families he had ruined, a figure meant to acknowledge the scale of the harm. Yet today he still owes $97 million of that amount, a debt that has barely been touched, while his personal net worth hovers between $100 and $115 million, built on book deals, speaking tours, and the very sales techniques he once used to defraud investors. He charges $75,000 per engagement to stand before corporate audiences and eager young strivers, teaching them the high-pressure closes, the psychological levers, the art of never taking no for an answer. The same playbook that once emptied retirement accounts and college funds. And then came the ultimate absolution from Hollywood itself, $1 million payout for the movie rights to his memoir, a glitzy film in which Belfort himself appeared in a cameo. Grinning as the camera rolled, while the picture grossed $392 million worldwide and transformed him from convicted felon into a charismatic folk hero for a new generation that cheered his excess and quoted his lines without ever hearing the voices of the people whose lives he had dismantled. One victim's daughter, her own family shattered by the fraud, wrote a viral open letter to director Martin Scorsese, pleading that the film acknowledged the real human cost. The foreclosures, the bankruptcies, the suicides, the quiet despair that no amount of cinematic flair could erase. Scorsese never responded. The cameras kept rolling, the laughter kept coming, and the victims remained footnotes in a story that had already been rewritten as entertainment. This is not the tale of a charming rogue who outsmarted the system. It is the indictment of a system that rewards fraud with second acts and third acts and sold-out auditoriums. The machine did not break. It simply upgraded its branding. And like any story still unfolding, there is no clear ending yet, but it has already begun. This is Dark History.